In this list, we'll be going over the best healing spells in D&D, but focusing more on the spell's general usefulness in combat, rather than the ability to output tons of healing. So don't be surprised if some weaker spells make it at higher spots on this list. And at number 10, we have the spell simply known as Heal. Heal is a 6th level spell available to clerics and druids that restores a flat 70 hit points to a creature, and removes blindness, deafness, and any disease that may affecting said creature. Now, Heal is a powerful spell, and to understand why it's such a powerful spell, we need to first understand that the average max level player character will only have about 150 to 165 hit points, while the maximum you can possibly have without any sort of magic item assistance is 440. That means the heal spell can heal well over a third of the average max level adventurer's health, and nearly a sixth of the bulkiest adventurers possible. This is even more potent when you consider that around the time you get this spell, the average PC's health will be around 85 to 90, meaning the heal spell can heal over 3/4 of your maximum health in a single use. So, why does it only take the number 10 spot on this list? Well, there are two problems with heal. The first issue is that PCs in 5th edition don't need to be at super high health values to function. Sure, it's nice and will help you ward off additional hits, but most characters can function just as well at 1 HP as they can at 100, which makes big, bulky heals actually somewhat clunky. The other problem is that heal is a 6th level spell, which means that not only are you using a very high level spell slot that you only have 1 or 2 to cast to the spell, but also, by the time you're able to get this spell at level 11, a lot of games will already be over or be wrapping up, as most games don't go that far into high levels, so you may not even get the chance to cast the spell in the first place, hence why it only takes number 10 spot on this list. And at number 9, we have Cure Wounds. Cure Wounds is a 1st level spell available to artificers, bards, clerics, druids, paladins, and rangers that allows you to use your action to heal yourself or a creature as you touch for a d8 plus the modifier whatever attribute you're using to cast the spell. The best part about this spell is how easy it is to get. Unlike most of the spells on this list that are much more restrictive on who can pick them up, 6 different classes can pick up Cure Wounds, which makes it incredibly useful if your resident healer character, assuming you have one, goes unconscious and you're out of potions. Suddenly your tanky artificer or stealthy ranger can cast a spell and bring the healer back into the game. Alternatively, if a party member has taken a bunch of damage and you don't have a designated healer or health potions, then this one 1st level spell slot can turn any 6 separate classes into a pseudo healer for the time being. Unfortunately, because it's only a 1st level spell slot, it doesn't do a lot of healing, and the fact that it takes an action to use means you're giving up most of your attacks for the turn in order to use it. In addition to this, its touch radius is rather limiting, making it so that if you can't get to a creature on your turn, you can't heal them. Even so, it's still fairly useful in a diverse spell, and only takes up a 1st level spell slot to cast, allowing it to take number 9 spot on this list. And at number 8, we have Regenerate. Regenerate is a 7th level spell that, when you cast it, immediately restores an average of 33 HP and then goes on to restore 1 HP at the start of each turn for the rest of its 1 hour duration. In other words, this spell restores a whopping 600 HP total in addition to the initial heal. But that's not the strong part of the spell, or rather, that's not the strong part about the start of the turn healing. The strongest part of Regenerate is the fact that it doesn't require concentration, meaning it can't be broken by anything out of dispelling effects, and works even if you go unconscious and would usually need to start making death saves. This essentially means that so long as you're not outright killed, you're still in the fight. That said, depending on how lenient your DM is and how smart the monsters are, the monsters may start attacking you even after you've gone down if they figure out your trick, and don't want you popping back up again. In addition to that, it does have the problems we ran into with Heal, where it takes a very high level before you're able to access and it takes the spell slot, and you'll only get a second one of them at the max level in the game. This time, the level you need to access Regenerate is 13 as opposed to Heal's level requirement of 11. But for its ability to ensure that you'll always be fight ready at the start of your turn, Regenerate still takes number 8 spot on this list. And at number 7, we have Aura of Vitality. Aura of Vitality is a 3rd level spell slot available to clerics, druids, and paladins that takes an action to cast and requires your concentration, but lets you use a bonus action to restore an average of 7 HP to any creature within 30 feet of you on the same turn and every subsequent turn for 1 minute, or 10 rounds of combat. This spell is good for 2 reasons. Of course, there's the obvious ability to restore health to your companions without taking up any of your actions, leaving it open for other uses, but remember how the spell restores an average of 7 HP 10 separate times over a minute? Well, that means if you have a minute to cast the spell out of combat, it heals, on average, as much as the heal spell from the number 9 spot, while only taking a 3rd level spell slot. So why does it only take the number 7 spot? Well, mostly because the place you'll normally need to be healing is in combat rather than out of combat, and the spell isn't nearly as good in combat. First and foremost, it takes both your action and your bonus action the round it's cast in order to heal. So you won't be able to do anything else that round besides heal and maybe move a bit if you're doing it through this spell. Though on subsequent rounds, you are much more free to do things, seeing as in rounds after it's cast, it only requires your bonus action, but that leads us to our second problem. The second problem is that in order to cast Aura Vitality, you need to concentrate on it, which means you won't be focusing your concentration on anything else, like Spirit Guardians or one of Druid's many concentration spells, or holding a spell. You also risk that your concentration is broken before you get to the additional turns where the spell becomes more useful if you're hit, or if your concentration is broken in some other way. And speaking of concentration spells that are much more broken out of combat, and at number 6, we have Healing Spirit. Healing Spirit is a second level spell available to Druids and Rangers that lets you use your bonus action to summon a spirit in a 5-foot space within 60 feet of you. After that, you can have any creature that enters the spirit's area or starts their turn there receive a d6 of healing with no action required on your part. And the fact that it doesn't cost you any action is exactly why it's so strong. Remember how Aura Vitality was able to restore an average of 70 hit points, but required you to focus on one single creature you'd want to heal with it, and that turns bonus action? Well, Healing Spirit just requires that a creature move into a space. That means if you use this out of combat, and you and the party members that need healing just crowd around the Healing Spirit space and move in and out on each of your turns, you can give your entire party an average of 4 health per turn as to as many creatures that can move in and out again so the next party members can get in. This lets you heal every member of a party for an average of 35 HP over 10 rounds, or at least it used to. See, in April of 2020, Healing Spirit got an errata that made it so that it can only heal a number of times equal to your spellcasting modifier plus 1, or in other words, a maximum of 6 times, provided you don't have any magic items that are giving you a boost to your spellcasting modifier. So due to the errata, it can only heal party members for an average of 21 health with the maximum possible numbers of turns it stays around for. So why does this spell beat out something like Aura Vitality, which can heal much more at only 1 spell level higher? Well, because even with the errata, it allows you to use your bonus action to heal in combat, and unlike Aura Vitality, you can still use your action afterwards to say, shoot an arrow or two if you're a ranger, or attack with a cantrip if you're a druid. The concentration requirement is a bit more harsh, with you needing to keep concentration on the spell until the combat turn of whoever needs to be healed with. Who knows how many enemies in between you that might try to break your concentration. So, because it's super useful out of combat and still a bonus action heal in combat, Healing Spirit manages to take the number 6 spot on this list. And on the topic of bonus action healing spells, and at number 5 we have Mass Healing Word. Mass Healing Word is a 3rd level spell available to clerics and bards that costs 1 bonus action to cast and lets you choose up to 6 creatures within 60 feet of you and heal all of them by 1d4 plus your spellcasting modifier. Kind of like how Cure Wounds work, but for multiple different creatures, and more importantly, at range. Sure, this spell isn't as potent as Cure Wounds' 1d8 of healing, but unlike Cure Wounds, Mass Healing Word is a bonus action, which means you can still use your action to attack, cast a cantrip, make a grapple check, or otherwise influence the battle. Mass Healing Word also has the added benefit that it can completely turn the tide of a battle. Picture this. You're in a fight. It's been long and hard fought, and the bad guy's looking super rough. You think they're close to being defeated when suddenly, they recharge their big AoE attack. The entire party is now in trouble because, much like the bad guy, they're not looking so good either. The bad guy unleashes their attack and now most of the party is unconscious. The party of 6 has been whittled down to only 2, with the only people that survive the attack being the paladin, who managed to tank the attack with their auras and high health, and you, the swords bard, who managed to save against AoE due to your proficiency and dex saves. It's now your turn. Immediately, you use Mass Healing Word to bring up the other 4 members of the party, and you know the bad guy will need to recharge their AoE attack before they can take them all down again, and on top of that, you can still attack. Now, admittedly, this scenario is more of the ideal point in which you can use the spell, but it still illustrates the point of how useful the spell can be. The main downside to the spell is that it's a 3rd level spell, which means that it's competing with your much more deadly spells for spell slots, such as Counterspell, Hypnotic Pattern, or the ever-blastable Fireball, which is the only reason it doesn't take a higher spot on this list. And at number 4, we have Revivify. Revivify is available to Artificers, Clerics, Druids, Paladins, and Rangers. And although I've been trying to avoid mentioning alternative ways of getting the spells as to not bog down the video, it's interesting to note here that bards can also get Revivify through their Magical Secrets feature, meaning the same 6 classes that can get Cure Wounds can also get this spell. That said, Revivify is a 3rd level spell that has the very simple effect that in exchange for some diamonds worth at least 300 gold, you can return a creature that has died within the last minute to life with 1 health. This works automatically, but only so long as the creature is willing to be returned to life, as page 24 of the Dungeon Master's Guide does say that a soul can't be returned to life if it doesn't want to. Now, obviously a healing spell that can heal people who are already dead back to life is going to be very potent healing, but beyond that, Revivify has a distinction of being the lowest level spell in the game that can revive a dead party member. Revivify is somewhat limited by the fact that it must happen within 1 minute of the creature dying, but because each combat round usually takes 6 seconds, you can actually have 9 rounds of combat after a creature dies before you absolutely need to cast the spell. And most combats won't go that long anyway. Unfortunately, Revivify doesn't work if the body is missing some sort of vital part, like its head or heart, or if the creature has been killed by a specific spell that prevents raising, such as a disintegrate spell. But most of the time, so long as you can afford the diamonds, you'll be able to revive them no problem in nothing more than a 3rd level spell slot, and of course the diamonds. Of course, since combat doesn't usually last the full 10 rounds, the best way to use Revivify is as soon as combat ends. And then, since you're now out of combat, you can then spend resources healing the formerly dead person up with an Aura of Vitality or Healing Spirit from earlier on in this list. Of course, despite being the lowest level revival spell, a 3rd level spell slot is still a fairly costly spell slot to use up. But even so, Revivify is one of the best 3rd level spell slots you can cast, so it's not like it's being wasted. Thus, for its ability to return a creature to life at such a low level, Revivify takes the number 4 spot on this list. And at number 3, we have Good Berry. Good Berry is a spell available to rangers and druids that lets you create 10 berries that each restore 1 hit point and also provide the nourishment you need for a day. Now, this is really good in multiple ways. First off, the fact that it provides all of the nourishment you need for the day is really strong and even downright broken in survival games to the point where many DMs actually ban or nerf this spell if they're trying to run that type of game. It's also very useful for role-playing if, while the rest of your party feast on meat and wine, your character just eats a single berry and calls it a day. Now obviously, if it was just good for those effects, it wouldn't have made this list. As a healing spell, Good Berry is truly strong. Not only does it allow you to heal a flat 10 damage out of battle, either tying with or beating out the average 9.5 healing cure wounds would do with the maximum spellcasting modifier, but it also lets you heal a creature that has gone down 10 separate times. That's 10 times the enemy needs to knock a creature out for just 1 1st level spell slot. And the berries don't even lose their potency until a full 24 hours after you cast the spell. So you literally have all day in order to heal before the spell runs out. The only thing that really holds the spell back from the number 1 spot is that it does take an action to just eat or feed someone a good berry, which means that most of the time you won't be able to attack or do a whole lot of other stuff to turn you use good berry to get someone up. There's also the point that, like Cure Wounds, you are limited to touch radius when feeding someone a good berry, but unlike Cure Wounds, you can do this 10 separate times in combat with a 1st level spell slot, making this essentially 10 times the ability to bring someone up for the same level spell slot, easily grabbing the number 3 spot on this list. And at number 2, we have the spell Aid. Aid is a 2nd level spell, once again available to 6 classes that Cure Wounds is available to, even without factoring in magical secrets, and like Cure Wounds, its effect is rather simple. Aid lets you choose 3 people within 30 feet of you, and each of them gets 5 HP and their maximum health goes up by 5 as well. This number goes up if you cast with a high level spell slot, and the effect lasts for 8 hours but does not stack. So what makes this spell good enough to take the number 3 spot on this list? Well, simply the fact that for only a 2nd level spell, you can get 3 separate characters up in the fight. This is the lowest level AoE spell in the game, and it's still very good at what it does. Remember, a character is just as capable of fighting on 1 hit point as they are at 100, so outside of constantly being barraged by AoEs, most characters don't need to be given a super high number of hit points in order to remain standing. Moreover, the spell actually does fairly decent healing for what it does, able to do the same amount of healing as a Cure Wounds of the same level might do, but spread out to multiple characters, and even outshining the 5th level spell Mass Cure Wounds, which sadly didn't make this list, in terms of sheer healing if cast at the same level, though it admittedly does so in a smaller radius. So for being able to do all of that and also bring 3 separate characters back into the fight after they would have been knocked out, Aid takes the number 2 spot on this list, just barely beaten out by a more versatile spell. And at number 1, we have Healing Word. Healing Word is a 1st level spell available to bards, clerics, and druids that lets you heal for 1d4 plus your spellcasting modifier as hit points to any creature within 60 feet of you as a bonus action. Now, what's so great about this spell as to take the absolute top spot on this list? Well, like Healing Spirit and its AoE counterpart, it's a bonus action to cast, which lets you use your action to do other things with your action, such as any class feature you might have that takes an action. Cleric's Channel Divinity comes to mind. Just like Cure Wounds, Revivify, and Aid, it does what it does at only the cost of a comparatively low-level spell slot. And like all the spells on this list, it can bring an unconscious character back up and into the fight. Healing Word is just kind of the best of all worlds, and with none of the drawbacks. It doesn't have the limited range of Cure Wounds or Goodberry, the action requirement of Aid, the concentration requirements of Aura Vitality or Healing Spirit, or the high-level spell slot requirement of Heal or Regenerate, or their AoE counterparts. In fact, Healing Word is so good at what it does that even just one character with Healing Word can usually prevent a party from needing to make death saving throws outside of super deadly encounters. So, for being the best at what it does with none of the drawbacks of the other spells, Healing Word easily takes the #1 spot on this list. Alright, and that's the list. Are there any other better healing spells that I might have missed that should have been in the video? If so, I'd love to hear about them down in the comments, as well as ideas for future videos just like this one.